My name is Simone Cross. I'm 35 years old, and I've spent the last decade capturing moments other people are too close to see clearly. 9 years ago, I stood in my childhood living room in my wedding dress, holding my father's Leica M6, and my mother looked me in the eye and said the words that would define the next decade of my life. If you marry him, you are no longer welcome in this house. You're choosing poverty over family. Don't come back. I was holding the camera because I'd asked my cousin to photograph my small ceremony, and I wanted to get one shot before we left me in my grandmother's altered lace, standing in the home where I'd grown up. A last photograph before everything changed. I didn't cry. I'd learned a long time ago that the steadiest hand gets the sharpest image. I just looked at her, come as a stopped lens, and said, then I'll develop my own life. 9 years later, 3 weeks ago, she came to my gate in Connecticut. Not the house in Cleveland where she'd said those words. My gate, the one with the intercom system and the security camera that caught every frame of her standing. They're in clothes I didn't recognize, holding a folder I'd later learn was full of eviction notices. And the woman who told me I'd chosen poverty was about to learn what I'd actually chosen instead. Welcome back to Revenge Camera Stories, where people who see the world through a lens capture the truth in every frame. And some images take years to develop but never fade. If quiet boundaries and the long game are your kind of justice, settle in. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, and be sure to subscribe. Let me back up 9 years, because the photograph I didn't take that day told more truth than any I've ever captured. It was a Saturday in October. Golden light coming through the bay window of my mother's house in Cleveland Heights. The kind of light photographers wait all day for. I was 26, freshly graduated with an MFA in photojournalism, and I'd been freelancing for 2 years, enough to eat, not enough to impress. My mother, Margaret Cross, sat on the settee she'd inherited from her mother, the one reupholstered 3 times, because throwing it out would have been admitting we weren't the kind of family who kept things. She'd spent my entire childhood curating that image. The house, the memberships, the careful way she pronounced certain words, so no one would remember her own. Mother had cleaned other people's homes. Simone, I need you to think very carefully about what you're doing. I was in my wedding dress. We were getting married in 4 hours at the courthouse. Then dinner at a small Italian place Marcus and I loved. 20 people. His family. A few friends. My father had died 2 years earlier, and my mother had made it clear she wouldn't be coming. I have thought about it, Mom, for 3 years. I love him. Love. She said it like a diagnosis. Marcus is a good man, I'm sure. But he's a mechanic, Simone. He works with his hands. You have a degree. You could do so much better. He owns his shop. Mom, he's building something. In Queens. In a garage. You want to live above a garage in Queens when you could. When I could what? Stay in Cleveland and shoot weddings for your friends. Become the photographer they hire because they know my mother. Her mouth tightened. I'm trying to protect you from a hard life. Your father and I worked so hard to give you opportunities. Dad loved Marcus. Silence, the kind that lands heavy. Your father, she said slowly, wasn't always practical. He had a soft heart. I don't. She stood up, smoothed her skirt, a gesture I'd seen 1,000 times. The physical punctuation to a decision she'd already made. If you marry Marcus Santos, you are choosing a life I cannot be part of. You're choosing to be ordinary. And I didn't raise you to settle. I felt my hand find the camera strap across my chest. My father's Leica. The one he'd used to shoot civil rights. Marsha's in the 60s and my first birthday and everything in between. He'd left it to me with a note. See clearly. Shoot honestly. Don't let anyone tell you what deserves to be in the frame. I'm not settling, Mom. I'm choosing. Then choose carefully. Because if you walk out that door to marry him, don't come back. Not for holidays. Not for help. Not ever. I mean that. She did. I could see it in her posture. In the way she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. In the way her hands were already reaching for the book on the side. Table as if I'd already left. Okay, I said. Okay. I won't come back. I lifted my father's camera. Framed her in the viewfinder, the settee, the careful room. The woman who'd spent 40 years building an image of respectability and was now willing to cut her only daughter out of it to keep the frame clean. I didn't press the shutter. I just lowered the camera and walked out. Marcus was waiting in his truck at the curb, wearing the suit he'd bought for this, looking nervous and hopeful and exactly like the man I wanted to build a life with. How'd it go? He asked. About how I expected. He reached for my hand. You okay? I looked back at the house once. The bay window. The closed door. Yeah, I said. Let's go get married. Here's what you need to know about me before the rest makes sense. I grew up in Cleveland Heights in a house that looked like we had more than we did. My mother was a legal secretary who dressed like a lawyer. My father was a high school history teacher who shot documentary photography on weekends protests, neighborhood events, the kind of work that mattered more than it paid, he taught me to see. We'd spend Saturdays in his makeshift darkroom in the basement, and he'd show me how an image emerges in the developer tray invisible at first, then gradually appearing, the truth coming into focus one tone at a time. Photography, he'd say, is about patience. You can't rush the chemistry. The image comes when it's ready, not when you want it to. My mother hated the darkroom. Hated the smell, hated the hours he spent down there. Hated that he turned down commercial work that paid better to shoot things that didn't matter to anyone but him. After he died sudden, a heart attack at 54, she boxed up his equipment and put it in my apartment before I could argue. Take it, I can't look at it anymore. I kept his Leica. It became the one constant. I put myself through grad school shooting everything weddings, corporate headshots, real estate. I was good at the commercial work. But my heart was in the documentary projects I couldn't afford to pursue. Stories about working people, immigrant communities, the kinds of subjects my mother called depressing. I met Marcus at a gallery opening in Brooklyn. I was shooting the event for the gallery owner. He was there with his sister, who was one of the featured artists. He asked me what I did, and when I said photojournalist, he asked to see my work. Most people don't ask. We stood in the corner of that gallery for an hour while I scrolled through my phone showing him a series I'd shot on subway workers. He asked questions. Real ones. About composition, about access, about what I was trying to say. He was a mechanic. He had grease under his nails he'd scrub it at before coming. He'd grown up in Astoria, son of a Dominican single mother, put himself through trade school, and saved 7 years to buy his shop. He saw the world the way I did, as something you build with your hands, one honest piece at a time. My mother met him twice. The first time, she asked what he did. When he said mechanic, her smile went tight. She pivoted the conversation to me, to my degree, to the opportunities I should be considering. The second time, he brought her flowers. She put them in water and didn't mention them again. After he proposed with his grandmother's ring, in the shop after hours, under the lift where he'd just finished restoring a '67 Mustang I knew what was coming. I called my mother to tell her. You're making a mistake, she said. No congratulations. No happiness. Just verdict. He's a good man, Mom. Good men don't make good lives. You'll struggle. You'll resent him. And when you do, don't come crying to me. I didn't cry to her. I married him in a courthouse with 20 people. moved into the apartment above his shop in Queens, and started building a life she decided wasn't worth witnessing. What she didn't know, what she never asked was what I was building behind the camera, while she wasn't watching. The first year was lean. Marcus put everything back into the shop. I took every assignment I could get: headshots, events, product photography. We ate a lot of rice and beans. We didn't go on a honeymoon, but I had time. Between gigs, I worked on a long-form project I'd pitched to a magazine before the wedding. A photo essay on immigrant-owned small businesses in Queens. Bodegas, repair shops, restaurants. The people who built New York one transaction at a time. Marcus's shop became part of the series. Not because he was my husband, but because his story saving for 7 years. Buying the space, hiring his first employee. A kid from the neighborhood was the story I was trying to tell. The magazine ran it. 6 pages. My name on the byline. It won a regional press award. My mother never saw it. She didn't follow my work. She'd made it clear I'd chosen poverty, and she wasn't going to watch me live it. But other people saw it. A gallery in Brooklyn reached out. They wanted to show the series. Then another magazine commissioned a follow-up. Then a grant came through $15,000 to continue documenting working-class communities. I didn't post about it on social media. My mother wasn't on Facebook anyway. I just worked. Year 3. I sold a photograph to the permanent collection at the Museum of the City of New York, a portrait of an elderly Korean woman who'd run a dry cleaner in Flushing for 40 years. The museum paid $8,000. Marcus's shop expanded. He hired 2 more guys. We moved into a small house in Astoria, nothing fancy, but ours. We painted the spare room white and I turned it into a home studio. Year 5. I won a Pulitzer Center grant to shoot a series on gentrification in Brooklyn. That one got picked up by the New York Times 3-part series. Front page of the Sunday Metro section. I didn't call my mother. Year 7. I had my first solo show at a gallery in Chelsea. The opening had 200 people. Marcus wore a suit. His mother cried. The New York Times reviewed it. They used the word essential. 12 pieces sold. At 4,000 美元 to 12,000 美元 each. I thought about sending my mother the review. I didn't. By year 9, I'd been published in National Geographic, The Guardian, and Time. I'd had work in 4 museums. I'd been invited to speak at my alma mater about documentary photography and social justice. We'd bought a small house in Connecticut, 2 acres. A converted barn I used as a studio, good light. Marcus opened a second shop. We weren't rich, but we were stable. We were happy. My mother didn't know any of it. She'd cut me off so completely that when her sister, my Aunt Ruth, reached out once to tell me, my mother had asked about me, I didn't respond. Ruth told me later that my mother had said, if Simone wanted to talk to me, she knows where I am. I did know. I just didn't want to. The smell of photo developer. That sharp chemical scent that used to fill my father's basement now filled my Connecticut studio. I'd gone back to shooting film, processing it myself. The slow, patient work of watching an image emerge. My father used to say the image comes when it's ready, not when you want it. I'd waited 9 years. And then my mother showed up at my gate. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the studio editing a series. I'd shot on women-owned farms in the Hudson Valley. When the gate intercom buzzed, we don't get unannounced visitors. The house is set back from the road, behind a stone wall and a gate we installed for privacy, not security. Mostly, it keeps out the occasional lost driver. I glanced at the security camera feed on my laptop. A woman stood at the gate. Late 60s, thin in a way that looked new. Wearing a coat I didn't recognize and holding a folder. It took me 3 full seconds to recognize my own mother. I sat very still. She pressed the intercom button again. I could answer. I could open the gate. I could do what she'd probably expected. What part of me? The part that was still 26 and holding a wedding dress wanted to do. I could ask what was wrong. Instead, I picked up my camera, the same Leica, and I took a photograph of the monitor showing her at my gate. Then I pressed the intercom. Yes? Her voice came through, thin and unsure. Simone, it's Mom. I know. A pause. I could see her on the monitor, shifting the folder from one hand to the other. Can I come in? I need to talk to you. About what? Another pause, longer. I need help. 3 words. After 9 years. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong. Not I missed you. I need help. I looked at the monitor, at the woman who told me not to come back, at the folder that I could guess, from the way she held it, contained something she didn't want to be holding. Mom, you told me if I married Marcus not to come back. Not for holidays. Not for help. Not ever. You said you meant it. I know what I said, but did you mean it? Silence. Did you mean it when you said it? Simone, things have changed. I've lost time in a situation, and I thought. You thought I'd help. You're my daughter. I felt the old instinct rise up. The one that wanted to open the gate, to hear her out, to be the good daughter who forgives and forgets and makes everything okay. Then I remembered standing in her living room in my wedding dress. Mom, I was your daughter 9 years ago. You chose not to have one. I can't help you now. You don't understand. The house, I'm going to lose the house. I lost my job 2 years ago. I've been trying to manage, but the mortgage, the reverse mortgage I took out. It's Simone. I have nowhere to go. I closed my eyes. The house, the one in Cleveland Heights, the settee, the bay window, the careful image she'd spent 40 years maintaining. I'm sorry that's happening to you. So you'll help? No. The word landed heavy. I could see her face change on the monitor. No. You told me you didn't raise me to settle. I didn't. I built a life, a good one, with Marcus, the man you told me would make me poor. We're not poor. Mom, we're fine. Better than fine. And I built that without you, because you made it very clear that's what you wanted. I made a mistake. I was angry. I was scared you'd struggle, and you were protecting the image. Your image. You didn't want a daughter married to a mechanic because of what people would think. That's not protection. That's control. I could see her crying now. Small, shaking movements. Part of me wanted to stop, to open the gate, to be the bigger person. But I thought about my father, about the darkroom, about patience. The image comes when it's ready, not when you want it. Mom, I'm not going to help you. Not with money. Not with a place to stay. Not with anything. You made a choice 9 years ago about what kind of relationship we'd have. I'm honoring that choice. Simone, please. You should go. I turned off the intercom. On the monitor, I watched her stand there for another full minute. Then she walked back to a car I didn't recognize, got in, and drove away. I sat in my studio, surrounded by photographs I'd taken over 9 years. And I waited to feel guilty. It didn't come. What came instead was something quieter. A sense of completion. Like the image had finally developed all the way. Marcus came home 2 hours later. I told him what happened. He sat down across from me at the kitchen table and asked the question I'd been asking myself. How do you feel? Like I just did the hardest thing I've ever done. Do you want to change your mind? I thought about it. Really thought. No. He nodded, then you did the right thing. She's going to lose her house. That's not your fault. I know, but it still feels heavy. It feels heavy. Because you're not cruel. But that doesn't mean you have to carry it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I went into the studio and pulled out the photograph I'd taken 9 years ago. Not of my mother in her living room, but the one I'd taken later that day, of Marcus waiting in his truck. The hope on his face. The beginning of everything. I'd printed it once, years ago, and kept it in a drawer. I looked at it now under the safe light and realized what my father had been trying to teach me all those years in the darkroom. Some images need time to develop. You can't rush them. You can't force them into focus before they're ready. And some people need to sit with the consequences of their choices in the same kind of darkness. My mother called twice more that week. I didn't answer. She sent an email. Subject line, please. I didn't open it. Aunt Ruth called. Your mother is really struggling. Can't you just? No. She's your mother. She's the woman who told me I wasn't her daughter anymore. I'm just agreeing with her. Ruth was quiet. Then that's fair. 6 months have passed since she showed up at my gate. Here's what I know. My mother lost the house in Cleveland Heights. She's living with my Aunt Ruth now, in a spare bedroom, working part-time at a legal temp agency. Ruth tells me she's different, smaller, that losing everything broke something in her. I feel sad about that. I'm not made of stone, but I don't feel responsible. Marcus and I just celebrated our 10th anniversary. We went to Italy the honeymoon we never took. I shot 200 rolls of film. His mother watched the house. My next gallery show opens in 3 months. The series is called Self-Made, Portraits of People Who Built Businesses. Art lives from nothing. Marcus is in it. So is his mother. So is the kid from the neighborhood who's now running his first shop. My mother is not in it. Last week, I got an email from a woman I didn't know. Subject, your mother. I almost deleted it, but I opened it. It was from a therapist my mother had started seeing. She wanted me to know that my mother had given her permission to reach out, that my mother was working on herself and hoped one day to make amends. I wrote back, I'm glad she's getting help. If she wants to reach out in the future, she can. But I'm not waiting for her. I'm not holding space for her. I've built a life, and it's full. I meant it. The camera my father left me sits on my desk in the studio. I use it every day. And every time I look through the viewfinder, I think about what he taught me. See clearly. Shoot honestly. Don't let anyone tell you what deserves to be in the frame. My mother told me I was choosing poverty. What I actually chose was freedom. The freedom to build something on my own terms. To love who I wanted. To define success by my own metrics, not hers. She wanted me to fit into her frame. I built my own. And 9 years later, when she showed up needing something, I did the kindest thing I could do for both of us. I honored the boundaries she'd drawn. If you take one thing from my story, let it be this. When someone tells you who they are, believe them. When someone shows you how little space they'll make for your choices, don't shrink to fit. Build your own life. Frame your own story. And when they come back wanting to be in the picture, you're allowed to say the lens is already focused elsewhere. That's my story. 9 years of building in silence, one gate that stayed closed, and a boundary that saved my life. If you've ever been told you weren't welcome for choosing yourself, let this be your sign. You don't owe anyone access to what you built without them. If this reached you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. And remember, the best images take time to develop, but they're always worth the wait.